When you dare to share, you break the silence. When you dare to share, you speak your truth. When you dare to share, you use the full strength of your voice. When you dare to share, it brings opportunity to own your story. So tell it, be heard, and at the same time, your sharing is someone else's learning, inspiration, motivation, empowerment, and hope. There's always an element to each of our stories that remains a secret. For some, we feel it's a dirty little secret. Dare to share your untold story exposes these secrets in a welcoming and positive way. I encourage each of you out there to dare yourself to share what is yours to tell. When we dare, it is the courage to do something really important. Let this be a vow to each and every single one of us that we take risk, we brave, confront, and face what is, while inspiring and empowering all communities. So let's break that silence and tap into mental beauty. This is Salima Jadavji, your podcast host, a practicing clinical social worker, and your mental wellness connoisseur. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast, episode number 30. The now gregarious Superwoman was once a victim of bullying. To all my fellow listeners, before we get started, I'm just dropping in a note to give you a heads up that this podcast might be emotionally triggering for you. We do invite guests onto the show who share openly about extremely difficult life moments with exposure and impact of what the struggles have been like. The intensity of each episode could have a variable impact on your emotional and mental well-being based on your own personal story. If at any point the topic becomes uncomfortable or upsetting to you in any way, please do not pressure yourself to listen. Instead, be kind to yourself, do some self-care, and perhaps give another episode a try. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing our lovely and daring guest, Shelly Elsliger. Shelly is an engaging and passionate LinkedIn trainer and speaker who coaches executives, leaders, women leaders, departments, as well as corporate teams, inspiring individuals to maximize their professional branding potential and their influence online by mastering the art of social reciprocity and flow of social engagement. Shelly is driven to create a solid and equitable foundation and culture so all people feel accepted, valued, and worthy. Shelly is a member of the International Coach Federation, recognized as a woman you need to know by the National Women Speakers Association, a woman of achievement, a Forbes and Thrive Global Reader, Woman of Inspiration winner 2019, and on the global list of LinkedIn training experts, as well as a trusted speaker for LinkedIn Canada. Shelly is also an author, animal lover, and firewalker. Hello, Shelly. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast.
Hi, Salima. Thank you for having me.
Oh my goodness, the pleasure is all mine, Shelly. It's so lovely to be chatting with you today. I'm just getting so excited to have this chat. And I'm also really thankful that you bring with you this openness and willingness to share, and just knowing the support that you are providing by taking a stance to help break barriers of mental stigma. It means so much.
Thank you.
So, Shelly, in case you're still wondering, the podcast that we do here, it's about bringing forward untold stories that people go through, whether directly about a mental health struggle or something else. And something that we know is that no matter what the story, there is impact to one's own mental health in some way, which remains tucked away. The platform's intention is really a way to break those barriers of mental stigma that have been conditioned in society. So I'm hoping to continue to build presence with various guests like yourself. And I hope it's really about sending this message to encourage people to share and tell what they typically have reservations for expressing. So I'm bringing forward a trend, which I really hope takes, and it's called the mental beauty rethink. What do you think?
The mental beauty rethink. I love it because honestly, anytime we have a chance to change something for the better, then that whole entire process allows us to grow. So I love that what you're calling it. I love what you're doing because it's all about creating ways to pay goodness forward. And that's what I hope that my story will do. Um, it's all about sometimes unlearning. So when I think about rethink, I think about unlearning. And sometimes we have to go through that process in order to become better.
Really like that you captured that word unlearn because I say it a lot in the therapy room. Like sometimes we have to unleash, unlearn, unveil. We need to undo some things in order for us to move forward. So, Shelly, I've got some daring questions for you. Are you ready for them?
I'm ready.
Amazing. Shelly, give us the newspaper headline of how you would title your untold story. How would it read?
My headline story, and I have a few, but this is the one that I'm attached to the most, would be Speak and Be Heard, even when your voice shakes.
Okay, let me see if I got that. Speak and be heard even when your voice shakes?
Yes.
Wow. Ooh, that's a good one. Okay, tell me a little bit more about that.
So I had to relearn to get my voice out there because I went from a gregarious child and very fun loving with a big voice to somebody who had shut down and really became quite quiet and didn't feel I had a voice, to now somebody who speaks on the big stage quite regularly. And every time I get on that stage, my voice shakes and I have to work through it because what happened to me all those years ago, I don't think it ever completely dissolves. It never completely disappears. But when it shows up, I have the power to beat it down. So when my voice starts to shake, I get through it. I beat it down. I win over it. I win it over, and I win over it, I should say, and I go through with it. And that happens pretty much every single time.
That is so powerful. You just said
Mhm.
power to beat it down and win it over and go through it. Simple and powerful message right there. Speak and be heard even when your voice shakes. Okay, I'm going to remember that one too for myself. So, Shelley, tell us what your untold story is all about.
So my untold story takes me back to when I was about, well, I was 12, almost 13 years old, and I was in a public speaking contest. And throughout elementary school, because I grew up in the Maritimes, so we had elementary, junior high, and high school. Um, I loved to speak. I think I did my first public speaking contest in grade 4. Um, so now I was going in grade 7 and was asked to go in kind of a national public speaking contest. And it was really like one of a kind to happen at my little school, right? So it was quite a big deal. And of course, like everybody does in a small village, everybody came out to see me that day. Um, and it was my turn to get up and speak. And I was actually speaking on empathy. 12 years old, speaking on empathy. And I remember I got to the spot where the little X was on the floor that I was supposed to stand on. And I had some cue cards because my public speaking mentor would say, "You need those cue cards, even if you're not going to use them." And I said, "I don't need them at all." And but she said, "You take them." And so I took them, and I'm standing there with my cue cards and my new red shoes, my first pair of high heel shoes. I asked my parents for that as a gift, considering I got into this competition, so they bought them. And as I'm about to speak, I my bully stood up in the front and basically decided to say, Shelly Welly with the big fat belly.
Oh,
And I remember that I started to shake and my cue cards just fell to the floor. And I turned around and I was trying to get out. They had those big, big, heavy drapes
mm-hmm,
in the back, and I was
mm-hmm.
trying to, find my way out, find that opening of the drapes, and I couldn't, and I was stumbling and I was crying and I was shaking. And then finally I found the opening and I started to run, and my left high heel shoe just came from under me. I fell and it flew and it I don't know, it ended somewhere, I couldn't find it. So I grabbed my right high heel shoe and, just went out the back door and walked all the way home, about half a mile, uh, with like that. And when I got in the door, all I said was, "I'll never speak in public again, and I'll never wear high heel shoes again, especially red ones." And, went up to my room, and that was pretty much, quite devastating for me. And it just changed the way that I saw myself, and I stuck to my guns that I would never do those 2 things. It was almost like I went through, a trauma. Uh, well, I did go through trauma, and then I just became a different person after that. I wasn't that old Shelly that was there before that incident. Um, I changed a lot. Um, and so I didn't tell that story for a long time, but then I realized as I got older that it really had a lot to do, um, with regards to where I am now in both my personal and professional life.
So I'm curious about this bully. Did you have more than one bully, or was it this one person?
There were always people that are gonna say things, like, especially if you're a little chubby kid, kids can be mean, but nothing that really stuck to me. I could always, like, kind of, like, just, you know,
Like brush it off.
brush it off easily. I just that that was my character. Um, but that one person was the one who didn't let it go, the one who every chance she had, um, would make sure to want to get me in that spot of feeling vulnerable and then make sure other people heard it. Um, so yeah, when I think back about bullying, there's only that one person that really stands out, that person who could could make me feel so small that I was invisible.
And so when you went through that after that plugging after that public speaking, did you end up suffering in silence? Like I mean you ran home, like did anyone talk to you about it? Were you able to like talk to anyone at school or your parents? Like did anyone ask you where your other red shoe went? Like what happened?
No, I actually didn't tell anybody about it. I guess I just sucked it up, and what I would do is I would basically have a routine. I would come home from school, and I would really just hide. I would go up into my room and I would turn on music for up to from 2 to 3 hours a day. Um, and that and I would just dance. And that was my way to kind of just psych myself out. Like it was my way to just not have to deal with speaking to my family or speaking to anybody. And my parents just thought, especially my mother, she was more involved with my father than my father, but my mother just thought it was like growing pains because I was at that age of
Right.
puberty and teenager and just a lot. So she just decided that that was it. That was and it was okay. I would get through it. I would it would pass. But I never said anything to anybody, and I never said anything at school.
So there was all this avoidance. So there wasn't any like reaching out, telling anyone, or talking to your parents. I remember a couple moments ago you mentioned how it was a small town, so everyone was would come out to these types of events. Um, and so in that sort of environment, do you feel like it was harder to let people know what was going on because the whole town gets involved, or
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's still the same today. But I never realized it was that until I moved away and came to the big city. And uh, I look back now and I see how so many people suffer
mm-hmm.
from, okay, mine just happened to be bullying, but there are a lot of different things that affect people, and having that support and could be really helpful. But a lot of people will not start something or get involved because of what people will say. It's a very, when you live in a small village and everybody knows everybody, you're told not to say anything. And
So that's like the
there were
unspoken rule. Don't say anything.
the unspoken rule. And I remember another incident because I'm a big animal lover, and I remember, looking out and across the street, and probably this had a lot to do with why I didn't say anything about what was going on at school. But there was, there was a dog being neglected, and I wanted to report them. And so I came to my parents and I said, "I can't just stand back." And I was like 10, and I said, "It's wrong." And I
Mhm.
wanted to do something, and they said, "No, you'll get in trouble. They'll take the dog away." Like there was always some kind of threat. Um, and and so I thought that they would take the dog away and kill him, right? I was 10. But the idea was, do not say anything because they'll come after you and the dog will be killed. And so it's better to keep your mouth shut and don't say anything. So I don't think my parents necessarily thought it was wrong. I think that that's how they were raised because they
Mhm.
grew up there too. So I think it was just a cycle that we all went through. But nonetheless, it affected me, and it affected my ability to feel trust or to build trust
Right.
and to be able to talk about my own, whatever I was going through. So I
Mhm.
just quiet because I thought that that was the thing to do, and I didn't want anybody else to get in trouble because it'll
Right.
come back to
Right.
negatively affect me.
Right. So that fear was kind of imposed on you, and so you had that looming over you. So there
Mhm.
was not that wasn't something that you felt you had the energy to sort of combat if you had to.
Absolutely not. I didn't feel like I had any support, or didn't feel like I could find any support.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
thought that the best thing or the thing to do was to just hold it in and stay silent.
So it sounds like what you were kind of describing before was that you had this really big and bold personality. You were visible, like, and you could be yourself. And it seems like this incident like changed how you were sort of operating as a teen or as a young teen or a tween. Would you say that you experienced becoming an introvert after that?
Yeah, kind of like an introvert in disguise. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because my character is just not, I'm not an introvert in any way,
Yeah.
shape, or form.
Yeah.
But I almost became an well, became an introvert, but it was like an introvert in disguise. I decided that being myself was not worthy enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just changed and became kind of quiet and silent and more of a follower than a leader.
And so, what are some other messages that you sort of internalized and started to tell yourself and started to believe?
That you can't, that the only person you can trust is yourself. The only person you can talk to is yourself. I became, I would say, like older at a very young age. I took on the weight of the world. I didn't ask for help. And to this day, I don't, I struggle with asking for help. I think I'm much better at it, but I think I struggle with it for sure. Never felt completely supported. I I I would kind of like worry that relationships weren't, I couldn't trust them completely, so I would just kind of keep them, like I had lots of friends, but the level of trust with those friendships was never, there was always a distance, there was always a barrier that I planted in in the friendships that I developed. I had great friendships to this day. They're still in my life from back in my village, but and they're much closer, I would say, today than they were back then. So those lessons, that those messages I told myself were basically, just don't open yourself too wide because the door will come and slap you in the face.
That's a pretty intense message. You must have felt so little.
Felt little and felt, yeah, felt little and just not worthy, I would say, not worthy. And then from there, I went into a cycle of dieting very young, like very, very young,
So your
because I,
self image was also impacted then.
Oh, absolutely, because that's what my bully, that's how, she bullied me, right? Like, it was always some kind of joke or poem, and just happens my name is Shelly, so it rhymes with a lot of different words, so, she could make up, poems on the fly, and it was always targeted around my weight, or, being that chubby kid, or, so I started dieting from then on in, and went through a cycle of, like, anywhere from starving myself to, um, diet pills to, like, Nutrisystem to Weight Watchers to I mean, the I could do a whole show just on that. So I went through, and still go through a lot of that cycle, it's something that heals, it's something that gets better, but it's not something that ever, I think, completely dissolves and can be triggered at any time. So, that's how that incident, I would say, affected me the most because I went into this detrimental cycle
Mhm.
of that held me back because I was so focused and I was always on a diet of some kind.
Mhm. Yeah, so that's how the self-image took a toll, and I'm curious about how else were you influenced by the bully? Were there other things that sort of influenced a different thought pattern or a different behavior or a different tendency for yours from your side?
I definitely held back, like, things that were so natural for me to do, like speaking in public. I also love sports. Saying back then I was like you wouldn't, a major athlete, but I loved being in sports. I loved playing sports, and I didn't really care how great I was in sports. I just wanted to play because I'm a community person. I love having people around me. So I didn't care. They could place me anywhere, but I loved
Just being
being
in
in
the
all
game,
kinds
just
of
playing.
sports. Yeah, soccer, you
Mhm.
name it. I loved anything. But then I became, I didn't think I was good enough. So I stopped playing those sports because I didn't feel I was worthy enough or good enough to play the sport. So it changed from me wanting to just be part of a great community and fun with friends to putting all that pressure on myself to be amazing, or at least what I thought was amazing. And if I couldn't fulfill that, then I shouldn't be there.
Wow. So it really kind of got you to suppress a lot of your personality and a lot of who you were and how you were used to showing up.
Yes, I definitely started showing up very differently than what I used to when I was smaller, when I was younger.
Do you feel like your bully had a mask of their own?
Oh yeah. eh, Absolutely. And I mean, I didn't know back then. I was too young to really know what she was going through in her own life. But years later, it's funny how stories come up, and that's the thing about social media, right? You learn about people's lives whether you're directly connected with them or not, and that's how I found out about my bully's life and what she had been through, not direct, uh, not through direct conversation,
Right.
more from finding out through other parties about her life and the loss and her own troubles. And she definitely had a troubled life and a troubled upbringing, and I just wasn't aware of that when I was younger. And now I do feel empathy for her because she didn't have a supportive family. She definitely um definitely went through a lot growing up herself, still is. So I guess I'm glad that I have found out about some of the things that she has lived, because it's not about so much as like forgiving or anything like that. Like, I
But
I
I think
don't
it gives
hold.
you some perception, some perspective, right? And some insight into it doesn't make it okay for what this bully has done to you or did at the time. But do you feel like it gives you some sense of like understanding of what her story was about?
Yes, and it makes you realize that. the wisdom I have today, I just didn't have as a child.
Mhm.
So if I had the wisdom I had today, back then when I was 13, it'd be quite different. But I didn't, right? We none of us do really. But I think it's nice to I think it's calms that beast, right?
Mm.
It calms my beast knowing that, that person, it just calms the beast inside me. And I say that because I don't think that things that happened to me, that incident that happened to me when I was younger, completely goes away. I think that it comes back, and it depending on what triggers me, I just have to fight it, right? I just have to fight it when I feel like that.
Mhm.
So I think by knowing her story and learning about her story more when I got older helped me to not focus as much on that incident anymore,
Right.
and to realize that she was just hiding. That was her way. My way was to go quiet. Her way was to bully, right? Like that was her mechanism to deal with what she was going through. My mechanism was to go quiet and become introverted and hide. Hers was to find that vulnerable person
Mhm.
and
Take it
put
out,
that vulnerable
externalize.
person, yeah, beat
Yeah.
her down.
Mhm. So I'm even more curious now. How old would you say you were? Around what age do you think you were? Do you recall when your transformation started to sort of um, come to light? Because you had this incident, lots of stuff happened, the imposter came out, all of those unhelpful and unhealthy thinking patterns were there, the mindset was different, your personality was almost suppressed. But it seems like that you mentioned something before that that there was something that changed within you. So was that the transformation that took place? And how
So
old were you?
I think I was actually quite like I would say it only happened about 12 years ago. Really? So I was well into my career professionally and all grown up and married. Um, I think the real transformation, I think that the transformation, started as I matured, but I decided to go into to I decided to become a certified coach, a life coach and a professional coach. And going through the coaching experience, which I think everybody should go through anyway, because and the reason I say that is because going through that experience made me be vulnerable. Because I think great coaches can't be great coaches unless they're coachable. So the only way that I could be coachable was to open up with my own and become vulnerable. So I had never been in the place where I had to uh, be as vulnerable as going through that coaching experience. But going through that coaching experience made me realize just how that incident had affected me
Mm-hmm.
and how it was going to be me to
Mm-hmm.
change my narrative.
Right.
So I think it built up to that. I think that I was changing progressively as I became an older teen into an adult, into, and continued from there. But I think when I got into becoming a coach, I just realized that I couldn't be a great coach unless I was coachable. And that meant tapping into those fears that that I didn't necessarily want to talk about, that brought me back to a painful place, but it certainly opened me up, and it was the thing that allowed me to unlearn certain behaviors that I had learned throughout those years as a result of that incident. And I almost turned back the hands of time in many ways. So I would say that was a pinnacle time for me when I decided that my story mattered, my voice mattered, and as shaky as it could get, I was going to do what I wanted to do, and that was to have a voice and to make it matter.
So, Shelly, when people come to see me for therapy, like in the therapy room, individuals are typically in one of three places in in on their path, and some are getting started, some are in the middle, some are looking back. What part of the journey would you say that you're in? Would you say that you're getting started, in the middle, or looking back?
Say probably looking back.
Hmm. And how do
Looking
you
back.
know?
Just because I'm able to, well, number one, I have my Superwoman costume again.
Hmm.
I had one when I was like 5, so I have one, again that I wear when I, speak like, often when I speak, so that that is a big sign there. I don't think, like, I think it's something personal, but when I bought um, that Superwoman, cape again, and I wore it to my first, LinkedIn workshop,
Hmm.
or when I did LinkedIn in high heels, it's one of my workshops that I do.
Oh, nice.
When I did that, it just made me realize how far I had come, and I was no longer that 12-year-old on, standing on the the tape with the X.
Hmm.
I had
Hmm.
come a long way, and I was back to that kid in grade 4 that just would speak on anything and speak on a topic in a dime, right? So so that's why I say I'm looking back, because I now get up there, and like I mentioned in the title, even when my voice shakes. So I'm looking back because I'm now able to speak. Um, I'm able to put my voice out there. I'm able to stand up for myself, and I'm able to not hold on to the past and not let fear overcome what I want to do. So I think that that's why I would say looking back.
That sounds pretty firm. And so, what would you say that you're grateful for with encountering this journey of your untold story?
If I had never gone through what I went through when I was like 13, I don't think I'd be where I am today. I don't think I'd be as successful as I am today with LinkedIn. LinkedIn helped me to get my voice back.
Mm-hmm.
I was lucky enough to pay a coffee forward to somebody about 11 years ago, and it just happened to be somebody from LinkedIn. And it's funny how you can be in that right place at the right time, and somebody is just listening to every word you're saying about how you want to use this tool and how you want to change the world and how you want people to find their voice again. And that person did that and became my mentor. And as a result, I ended up on the list of globally recognized LinkedIn trainers.
Right.
I would never have imagined that happening to me. Um, but it would never have happened if that incident had not happened when I was, 12 years old. It would not have happened, because one of the very first workshops that I conducted was called LinkedIn in High Heels for women business leaders. And it wasn't about, just filling in sections of your profile. It was about finding your voice and, and, beating down imposter syndrome. So being able to do that showed me how strong I really was. Um, and so, in many ways, I'm grateful that happened to me. It's hard to say that, but I really wanted that adversity to turn into something positive. And I fought that. I fought because adversity can sometimes do the opposite. In many cases, it does the opposite. Some people never get over it, some people never move on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that I moved on, and I'm glad that that adversity that happened when I was, younger, helped me to find my voice today. because it's really truly what I'm passionate about. And I've been able to help so many people,
Mhm.
especially women, find their voice because it's incredible to find out just how many people don't feel secure, don't feel like they have a story to tell, no matter how successful they are. So if that had not happened, I don't think I'd be where I am today.
It sounds like the work that you do, you know, you definitely have reclaimed your role as an extrovert and all the relationship building. And it sounds like there's been a lot of empathy work that you've also worked on. And it sounds like through some of the things that you've shared along the way in our conversation so far, shows me that you have found a way to have empathy for your bully.
Yeah, there's empathy. There's two skills that I've honed and worked on regularly. One is social reciprocity. So that is the foundation of everything that I do. So no matter what my day is like, or no matter what hardship I'm experiencing, I pay goodness forward. I try to give to other people without expecting other things back. So I've honed that skill. I work on it daily though.
Yes.
It's something that you have to work on daily. And the other skill that I've worked on and continue to work on is empathy. I belong to an empathy circle. I take empathy classes. And that's just because I feel it's something that we need now more than ever. And I want it to be part of my foundation in everything that I do, whether I'm training a group or I'm training one person or a whole department. I want I want to make sure that those two things are what drives my training forward.
Right.
Because without those two things, I really don't think you can have the impact that you have the capability of having. It's really
Right.
what drives anything that I do.
Serious and it's making impact for you now, and I certainly can hear even the drive in your voice because you're speaking so intently and so clearly about this experience and about the teachings and learnings. So much growth.
Hmm. A
um
lot of growth, a lot of
yeah,
work.
lots of work goes into this. It's definitely not overnight. So I really appreciate how you said that, it's something that you have to practice every day. When you were talking about the social reciprocity, that it is about giving, paying it forward and paying goodness forward and truly doing it without expecting something in return. It's not a one-time thing. It's a daily, regular practice. So I hope it's okay. I kind of want to circle back to your untold story and just really, if you can speak to how it affected your mental health, like how it manifested, like, were there any particular things that you experienced that you recall going through at that time?
Yeah, it absolutely no, it absolutely affected my mental health, and I saw a bit of it even coming back through COVID because I think I experienced it a bit of, COVID cave syndrome because I'm such now such back to myself, back to being an extrovert that I push that's something I do every day. I network every day. I reach out to people every day. So COVID kind of brought that kind of like, I guess, brought me back where I felt very much alone. So there were times through COVID that I felt very lonely, even when I was in the presence of one or two people. Still felt very lonely, and that's something that I experienced back. When I was younger, after that incident, I experienced uh, massive amounts of loneliness and feeling lonely, and it didn't matter how many people were around me. I felt just lonely. And I know that that affected my mental health to a very big degree because when you feel lonely like that, sometimes it can translate into not feeling worthy. So the two can kind of like partner together,
Mm-hmm.
and that can be pretty tough on a 13-year-old. It can be pretty tough on anybody. So it can definitely be tough on. It was very tough for me. was very tough for me at times and scary, scary to feel like that. So, absolutely. It definitely affected my mental health, and at times when, like, through COVID, this was a really this was the I would say, the time that
Hmm.
that really brought that time when I was 13 back to being in the spotlight, because I felt that same kind of loneliness at times,
Hmm.
and it was nothing I could control because of, quarantine, but it certainly brought me back, and I, again, had to really work hard to to push myself out of it, and use every means that I could, and I think even LinkedIn became even more important for me during that time.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, you're able to really look at parallels, right? Like your journey when you were that young teenager, emerging teenager, and how sometimes these parts of our stories, they can get re-triggered. And but it sounds like you have a lot of awareness with all of the work and growth work and all of your mindset shifting that you've been working on and executing. It's allowed you to kind of look at it as a parallel process and have reminders and flags to consider and go, oh, this is an indicator of something, this is something I experienced before. Oh, what does that mean I have to do right now to sort of
Yeah.
shake it up, right? So that's a really great skill that you have.
Well, it brings me back, and it just when I feel that way, and it makes me think about back in the day, I just go into resource mode, so I think that that's just like something that has happened over time, where when I feel that, I don't want to feel that, so I just go into action mode, and it's my way of coping, but it's also my way to get myself out of it.
Go into action. Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of research that supports that. You might not feel like doing something, but if you do it, you might start feeling something different. It can influence your mood and allow you to see things, like see that the what actions you're taking are producing a different mood. So then you keep going. It's a new reassurance, right? It sounds like you have learned that art of let's execute, let's go into action mode. Whether I feel like doing it or not, here are some actions I need to take. And you have that self awareness.
And also, I think when I do feel that, I can now remember that other people are going through the same thing probably as well. That awareness wasn't there when I was 13, but it certainly is now. So through COVID, when I felt like that, I was able to say, "You're not the only one. There are other people feeling that too,
Yeah, it's
and
that connection with
everybody's going."
humanity, right? Like knowing,
Yeah,
there are others who are going through something similar. Like collectively in society, we're going through this pandemic together. That there must be a whole slew of emotion and feeling that is coming up for people. Some might be similar to each of ourselves, or it could also be different, right? But it's that connection piece.
and I'm a community person, so in coaching, they discovered that I I am driven by other people. Like, that's why I like sports as opposed to, just walking by myself. I like I get energy from people. I get so knowing that, it also helps me realize that we're still going through it together. Like, I'm not alone. It's just we're feeling alone, but we're going through that feeling together.
I'm curious about what your key message is. What is your key message to the listeners of our show?
The key messages are, well, number one, when you're feeling when you're feeling down or low, or just not yourself, reach out to people, help them to understand. I i really make it a point of reaching out, even when I don't feel like it, because it is easy for me to go and be that young kid that just uh, took everything in and didn't share it with anybody, but it was a big load for me to handle back then. It's easy for me to do that now. I just don't allow myself to. So it's certainly something that say a lot is reach out, even when you don't feel like it. Push push it out. Call somebody, do whatever you need to do, but just talk to somebody. It can make a world of difference. Two, don't let your past define you. We all go through different things, but it doesn't have to define us. I think it's something that happened to us. It's something that happened to me. It's part of my story. It's part of my journey, but it's not the definition I give myself today. The other thing is just and it's part of my headline, but when you're feeling that sense of doubt, or you're feeling not worthy, or maybe even you don't feel like you're the person that should be the one to do something, and so your voice shakes as a result. Know that you have the power to beat that down. Know that you are always more powerful than any of those things, and live with that. Um, Live with that, and know that you have an art, like you are in a body of armor that will be there for you when you need it.
So, Shelly, I'm curious, what is something that was game changing for you as an inspiration that's close to you, reflecting your untold story? Like, was there an inspirational quote or book, or an event, or a person, or a place, something that spoke to you?
So Brené Brown has had a big impact on my life, especially the gifts of imperfection,
Hmm.
and man woman worthiness. She's done stuff on shame. So she's had a big impact on my life because we all have imperfections.
Hmm.
And I don't want to be perfect. I think that's a
Hmm.
that's a big goal to reach, and probably not a goal anybody can reach. So it's one of those goals that are unreachable. I want to maintain reachable goals. So what I've learned through that book, and learned through her podcast, and just her other books that she's made available to people, and other resources, is just that people might use our imperfections to tear us down, but we can use our imperfections to lift ourselves up. And that's always what I keep in mind. So my bully tried to, you know, used something against me that I already struggled with, right? I already struggled with body image. So that's what she honed in on. But now I turn that around, realize that we can all learn from that, and grow from that. So I don't want that to be something that keep holds me down. I want that to be the thing that empowers me, and helps me to grow. I think that that's why the gifts of imperfection
It is a great book. It is
has
a
meant a
great
lot
book.
in my journey.
Yeah, no, Brene Brown's books are wonderful, and they have a lot of insight and very relatable passages to sort of, absorb and digest. And, something that I've always said in my practice and with my clients is it's okay to be, perfectly imperfect. And,
Yes.
just striving to be perfectly imperfect and accepting yourself as perfectly imperfect does go a long way. So, Shelly, guess what?
What?
You have just dared yourself to share. Congrats. Tell me,
Thank you.
how was it? How was it to dare yourself?
It was good to dare and bear, uh, because I hope my story can help other people. Like, I am all about paying things forward. I'm all about creating those opportunities. I didn't talk about my story for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, I'm so thankful for your willingness to be a part of this podcast and that you showed up and shared such a delicate and tender time in your life, and how you've grown and how you're giving back and contributing to society. It really is so inspiring. And so I'm glad you got back on your high heels, and you have incredible strength, and I truly admire how you really are just showing up and giving back. Thank you for taking time for this chat today, and for this chat to go so deep and where all of the different tangents that we went on, and for all of your sharing. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Selima.
Once again, Shelly, thank you for being part of Dare to Share Your Untold Story and helping to be a voice in breaking down the barriers of mental stigma. To all of our listeners, if you like what you've been hearing on this podcast and you want to be part of breaking down barriers of mental stigma, I invite you to go wherever you are listening to the episode and hit subscribe. Leave us a comment or a review of the episode and maybe how you relate to it. To learn more about what we offer, visit www.daretoheal.co. And if you are feeling ready and brave to share, please submit your story by visiting www.daretoshare.co. Thanks for joining in.